All right, we're just setting up the live stream here. That'll also serve as a default recording for us, which is great. So we'll get that going. And as soon as that's up and done, we'll be ready to go. That is super exciting. So welcome everyone to our live chat here, whether or not you're here with us in the Zoom live at the moment, you're watching this on YouTube live or later on. My name is Jake Tuber with Endeavor, and I know some of you that are here already. And I am extremely pleased to give a very, very warm welcome to the guests that you're all here to talk to for our fireside chat. And that is none other than Nell Rojas. Now, many of you who joined in probably already know Nell's resume pretty well. Nell was the world skydiving champion for several years before she went into the world of underwater basket weaving, where she was moderately successful, but there's not a lot of money there. So she went into triathlon. She went elsewhere. Very successful collegiate running career at NAU. Ever heard of it? And really just exploded on the pro running scene, despite her variety of multi-sport talents in the past couple of years, winning the National 10-mile championships in DC. I actually saw that race live before Nell and I knew each other, and I was like, damn, Nell's crushing it. And a couple of top American finishes at a little race you guys have heard of called the Park Run 5K, as well as the Boston Marathon. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that one. It's called Boston. Some of you probably like it. Nell has impressed me, along with everyone else, with her authenticity, her thoughtfulness. She's an outstanding coach. She coaches Endeavor on athletes and a lot of other folks. And I've just been really impressed with everything I've seen from her. She's really gotten a lot of fame, most famous, though, I think at this point, for being the one who's going to be hosting and overseeing the track workout that everyone who comes to Endeavor on Boulder this August is going to be participating in, regardless of your speed. Nell's got a workout that we're all going to do together that'll be tailored for you. Nell, welcome to our fireside chat. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Yeah, glad to be here.
Right on. So I am really thrilled to be able to ask you a couple questions. The way we run this and the way we'll continue to run a lot of these is I want to ask everyone, if you have questions for Nell, you can do one of a few things. You can send me a private chat via DM in the Zoom, and I'll relay that to Nell. You can just ask it in the chat outright. Or if you want to unmute yourself, you can raise your hand first. I'll call on you. But there's a couple questions that came in ahead of time, Nell, that I wanted to run by you, while hopefully our audience here is getting their questions that I know are ready for you. They want to learn a little bit more about you, want to pick your brain as a coach and as an elite athlete. Now, a couple questions that I wanted to ask you, though. So first and foremost, you have had a lot of success lately, and you've talked a lot about whether or not that success would come, what disciplines it would come at, et cetera. But those successes of recent are obviously in a long line of successions, as it were. How do, if at all, the recent successes you've had in big races on a big stage fuel the way you go into thinking about your training, planning, et cetera? What are these big milestone successes at Boston, at national championships? Does that impact how and if you approach your training at all?
I think the way I'm thinking about answering that question is like, was my training any different before I had like a couple like big wins or good races now than it was then? And I'd say the only maybe big difference is like, no, I'd say I probably approach things very similarly. And I think that is just, I think that's like probably a lot of like why I got to where I am, because I acted like I was there from the beginning, like I took my training, like seriously. I was very consistent. I wanted to do the best I could do, no matter if it was like, like 3 years ago, I was training for local races, which in Boulder are like Olympians, and
Right.
you like go to this like local 5K and you like come back and you're like, I was 8th in like my local race.
I wasn't joking about the park run acclaim in Boulder. That's the real deal.
I know, like Gwen Jorgensen was there the other day. So I'd say like, I'm probably, it probably fuels my motivation, but I honestly think most of my motivation comes from like an inherent like drive to like want to like do the best I can do no matter what.
You've talked in the media in recent years after some of these big finishes about feeling like you belonged, like knowing you had the talent, certainly knowing you had the drive, knowing you could be in the mix, but feeling like you belonged as an elite in the top races in the country. It's obviously clear to anyone who's followed the sport recently that not only do you belong, but you were sort of among the leaders of those packs. Would you characterize those past feelings, even for someone as confident outwardly as you, as a degree of imposter syndrome, the kind that some amateurs feel? Or is that an unfair characterization?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think I still feel that way, because I think a lot of that might be like, you are no different than when you were not this successful. Like, I haven't changed a bit. I've come like 5 minutes faster, it's like, it's funny. Nothing changes. So like, you're like, am I really supposed to like be treated differently? Am I really supposed to like act differently? Am I really like supposed to be with these people who like I've looked at on social media for all these years? So that I think that like plays a big role in imposter syndrome, is like maybe that aspect. But and I still don't like, I think especially with what happened with like the whole shoe debacle when I ran Boston. And
you want to tell everybody who maybe wasn't intimately familiar with that, what the debacle was?
Basically just like I was criticized for dropping Adidas and wearing Nikes because I'm like the most confident in Nikes, and like Nikes work the best for my stride. And like, I just like never, like the shoe didn't fit my foot. Like the shoe didn't feel good. Not like the first workout I put it on, like I was like, these are pushing me backwards. And I was talking to my dad and I was like, there must be a transition period. I'm not sure. And so I gave it 6 months and I tested these shoes, and anyways, they never worked for me. And so I decided to drop Adidas a couple weeks before Boston to race in a shoe that I knew I knew worked for me. And so, I think that continues to play a role in like my mental game, where I'm like, okay, well, if some of my competitors are going to say like, I'm only good because I'm wearing Nikes, like, I still do feel like I have a lot to prove.
Ruby had a question in the chat. Were you able to try the Adidas shoes before you had signed with them, or were these shoes you were sent and told to wear after you had signed?
I had tried them on my own accord. Like last Boston in 2021, I ordered a pair of like basically all of the super shoes. Well, most of them, the Asics, the Adidas, actually only those. And like, you can't really, because I didn't want to like really like pay for them. So I like just like did a couple strides in them, and that's all you can really afford to do. Like if you want to return them, or if you want to like, I don't know, like it's hard to just put on a pair of shoes and do a full.
This is what all of us amateurs do, where we go and we like wear them for like a day and you're like, oh, they didn't really fit. I got to bring them back. So it's interesting. It's refreshing to hear that some of the best in the world are like, yeah, I didn't want to pay for the shoes. So I just kind of did.
No. I mean, the amount of money I spend on shoes is just like ridiculous. So I mean I go through like Hoka's like every 3 weeks. So I was like,
Did
okay.
you try the Carbon X or the Rocket and everything with some
I
of
did
those
not
treatment
try
shoes as well?
those. No,
Okay.
I didn't try them. But yeah. So I did get to try them. Now I know like if I want to be sponsored by someone else, which I don't know if that's a possibility anymore, like I would go through like a month trial period and I would do like hard workouts. I'd either do time trials or races so that I know like, okay, this is like a good shoe for me. And it's my career. It's my, you know, my goal is to make an Olympic team. Can I make an Olympic team in these shoes?
Yeah, it was a little puzzling for me as a fan from the outside to see folks kind of mad at you for dropping Adidas when people don't get mad at shoe companies for dropping athletes, or when they do, they're sort of like, well, I understand it. It's a business. They have business reasons. You did it for your own business reasons. You were like, hey, I want to perform and I think I could perform better in this. And it wasn't like a slight to Adidas. I mean, I could see why people would read it as such, but you're just like, hey, this particular product isn't necessarily bad for everyone else. It's just not working for me. I can't represent it the right way. Can't perform the way I need to. I'm putting in way too much work. So, you know, without getting too much further, it was just kind of strange for me to see a lot of folks kind of defending the big guy there in a way that was like, it's a little puzzling. Like here, I thought they would have really wanted to, I would have hoped there would have been more outward support, especially for sort of a self-driven, self-propelled young female athlete who's like out there trying to make it. I would have thought more people would have been like, hey, good for her. Like, that's awesome. She was able to say the money I'm getting from the shoe contract isn't worth it to me. My integrity and ability to perform has got to be real for the shoes I'm doing. I want to do it. So that was a bit puzzling for me. Did you feel like on the one hand, you were getting a lot of praise for your performance that was somehow outweighed? I mean, you mentioned a little ago, like, I'm not the same person to myself anymore. Why am I being treated differently? Was it more resentment about how you hadn't been treated well enough in the past, or this idea of just, whoa, I guess I'm different now and I don't feel different? What was that like after Boston, with people being excited about your performance, weird about the shoes, you feeling like the same person, but the world clearly reacted to you differently? Tell me a little bit more about it.
It was a roller coaster. Honestly, it's you know, after, you know, one of my friends really depicted it well. Like right after you finish, like you have just this like bliss and you're just like so joyful because like all of this hard work paid off and, you know, you got through it. And like then like right away, like barely like 5 minutes after, you're getting pulled for interviews and your people are trying to talk to you. You're getting tons of messages on your phone, which is all really great stuff. And you know, I don't resent anyone for like congratulating me and like maybe paying more attention to me when they hadn't before. I think that's just, I don't know. It's funny. I was running with my friend the other day and we ran into this girl from Boulder and she's like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so proud of you. You know, like you're such like a good, nice person. And I'm glad that like, this is happening to you. Cause like those other girls won't even like look at me or talk to me. And I was like, yeah. And I was running with this friend who sometimes I run with. And then we go running. We're like, thank you. You know, we go running and then we pass like a group of elite runner girls and they're all like, hey, Nell. And my friend just laughs so hard because she was like, I remember passing them like 6 months ago and they didn't say anything to you. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're so right. Like they didn't. And then it was like the first Boston, like half of them say hi to you. And then this Boston, they all say hi to you, you know, and you're like, whoa, that is like kind of, and no, I get it. It's, you know, it's weird because you're like, I got 2 minutes faster and I made 5,000 friends, you know? But I think I guess that's just the way things are. And then with the shoe thing, like that was really hard for me because, you know, I had like a lot of like very initial feelings where, you know, my running idol called me out on this, like someone I have looked up to for years, you know, was like saying things that really hurt me. And so that pulled me back, and I had to like deal with why she was saying those things, why it made me feel the way it did. And then I had to like rewrite my whole, like, okay, did I do something wrong? Is my integrity there? You know, and I had to kind of like make sure I was like doing things the way I wanted to. And so it's good to me. Boston was like such a learning experience. Like I have never learned more from one event in my life.
What's sort of the top things that list learning wise? Is it just about your performance? Is it about your standing in the sport? Give me the top things on that list. What have you learned?
I would say, like, you know, your classically, like your build does not like have to go well. Your build, if you put the effort in and say you're just not running well, you know, like you have a lot of failed workouts, or you have some failed workouts, or you know, you don't feel that great, like it's okay. And you can still have a great race. So like that happened to me. Like my build wasn't perfect. It wasn't great, but I just like kept on doing my thing and like go. And I like had to go in confident because I had no other choice. Why not? And I had a great race. And
how
that's
did you do that though? No, I want to poke at that if I can, because I remember, if I'm remembering correctly, you had posted something like a couple weeks out of Boston. Like I finally had a decent workout after all these workouts that didn't go well. I finally felt like one went well, which is good. How do you just decide to show up with confidence if the thing that's historically given you confidence in a build you can trust, that if you've done X, Y, Z, you're going to get A, B, C result?
Yeah.
How do you just decide to manufacture that internally if the sort of resume, for lack of a better term, leading up to that event wasn't there? How'd you do that?
A couple things I did. I went through my training log a lot, and I was like, okay, yes, this workout might not have been faster than last build or like as fast, but the effort was 100% there. The miles were there, you know, like the components were there. And so you're like, okay, I know I put the work in. And then you can also say like, I had my last Boston, like that is still in me, you know, like that will help me, that experience, my body will remember that. So I'm like, I know I have that. I know I can run fast. That was 6 months ago. So I know I have that. And then you're just like, you just say like, you just switch your like self-talk to be positive, you know, you like red flag. And I can kind of catch that because I coach a lot of people who will start saying negative things and you're like, wait, that doesn't make sense. So like, to me, I like get reminded a lot not to be negative. Cause I preach that, you know, I teach that. And then, you know, like right before the race, I was just like, you know what, like I am going to give myself a shot. And that's what I did.
Your authenticity, Nell, shines through every time I hear you talk, whether it's in this conversation here, it's on podcasts that you've done. Who you are, I think, really comes through in a great way. And I think more people are getting exposed to that because you have more of a profile now, because some of these recent, more high profile races have gone, right? You've got random elites waving to you on the trails that weren't waving to you 6 months prior, which is, if anything, just a really nice indicator of like, hey, for whatever reason, I've hit a mark where they're like, man, Nell's someone I want to be in good graces with because she's crushing it. Like, that's cool. Mm-hmm. At the risk of sounding and making this sort of an overly corny interview question, tell me about how your closer friends would describe you. Like, we know how you show up like after a race with your interviews, your confidence seeps through, your realness seeps through. Like, what are the people who've known you for a long time that maybe know you not as just a pro athlete? What would they tell us about you if we interviewed them?
I have no idea. I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of them, like, you know, like after, like if they see an interview of mine, they'll be like, you're so like authentically you know, like you're so like you can tell, like you're just you know. So I think like what you guys see, like authentic, like, you know, like, and I think that has so much to do with the way I was raised and my brothers. Like that's like probably if I was going back and like thinking about all these values that I was taught, it was like it's okay to be you and like be authentic and like you don't have to subscribe. And I think there are positives and negatives to that message, because like sometimes I find myself just like trying so hard not to like subscribe, you know, and like do the things everyone else is doing. So I think that, you know, that it's not all positive, but yeah, I don't know the other words that they would say. That's a hard one.
What strikes me, and maybe this is maybe I'm drawing an unfair conclusion here, but it strikes me as that someone less you would have wanted to run a Nikes and instead just spray painted over the Nikes with some Adidas stripes, the way athletes have done on, like when they wanted to run with one shoe that wasn't their company. And you were just like, no, I'm going to tell Adidas, like, you guys have been awesome. Thanks. But I can't do this for me right now. No hard feelings. I'm just going to do it. And I'm not upset about it. I'm not going to be pouting about it. I'm just very real. I'll tell anyone who asks. That's just, there's a certain lack of bullshit to you that I think a lot of people find really appealing. What are some of those values that you lean on, and do they impact not just who you are, but how you think of yourself as an athlete?
I mean, yeah, I think like one of my biggest things that I've actually learned that I like have this is I don't know how to put it, just to like not just like go with whatever's happening, you know, like, okay, fine, you're going to kick me off the track, I'll do my workout on the road. Or, you know, like instead of like whining or complaining, which like I've only picked up on a little bit, like when I'm coaching or like with my teammates now, is like things I would never think of to do, like show up to practice without a good attitude, you know, without being positive, like things like that blow my mind. That I think I've just had to like learn to just like do the best I can do with what I have, you know, like I'm going to get where I want to go if it's the hardest thing possible, kind of.
It seems like sort of adaptivity is a core trait of yours in a way, which is pretty cool. It's really useful for someone who's going to be running in conditions that they can't control, on courses and situations where they can't always dictate it. It's not pure on a track. So your success recently on the roads, that's a real quality of a great road athlete, is a degree of sort of self-confidence, and also self-confidence in your ability to just kind of adapt. Like, this is the hill that's in front of me right now. It's 10 degrees hotter on race day than I expected. Like, okay, I'm just going to do that. I could see that being really cool. I want to talk a little bit more about some of your thoughts as a coach. I think a lot of folks know that you're an elite athlete, but like, you're an elite coach. I know there's at least one person on this call right now that you coach who thinks the world of you as a coach, and their opinion counts for me a lot too. So I'm inclined to, by transitive property of excellence, ascribe that to you, Nell, having not worked with you yourself in your coaching. But you mentioned like this idea of sometimes your amateur athletes who you coach do things that kind of seem off to you, or maybe even other pros that you've seen. Let me ask you an interesting question as a coach. When you work with amateurs, what are the biggest things that amateur athletes do that piss you off as a coach?
That's funny. This would be a good question for my boyfriend.
Okay.
Just because I'll probably be like, I can't believe this person did that, or you know what I mean? But I'd say the hardest thing to teach my athletes is like to not immediately respond to like a bad workout, or to not freak out about things if they don't go the way they want them to go, they envision them to go. I think that's the hardest thing to teach. And then any negativity for me is like, I get it, but it's a little frustrating because I'm like, look, like we're all here trying to work our hardest. Like most of us are doing it for a hobby, like you have to like have that positive attitude or else like it isn't worth it. So I get like, I mean, believe me, like I finish workouts sometimes and I'm like, God, that sucked, like, ugh. But then you're like, you either get over it or you're like, okay, this is how I'll spin it or whatever. So I think that's it, like negativity.
How do you, if I came to you as an athlete and said, Nell, I've got a real issue here, which is that, like, to be honest, I'm not really resilient. If I have a bad workout or a bad couple of days, I get overly worried about it. I don't get the same level of high off a good workout. I feel like that's what I'm supposed to do. When it goes poorly, it goes bad. And I'm just not that resilient. Like I don't have a good attitude about things when it starts going bad. How would you train me to get better at that? What would be your program for that?
That's a good question. I would honestly, I would back the runner off and I would write the times slower.
Don't give away my secrets. I've got my athletes on this call, Mel. Don't give this away.
Yeah. So that they felt like they like accomplished a great workout, because like I can tell when it's a coaching mistake, I write their numbers too fast. I'm the first one to be like, coaching error. You had a great workout. I don't know, like I messed up the numbers. Like, and then because I know as a coach, like had I written slightly slower numbers, they would have come out of that workout and been like, I am amazing, and you're just like, oh man, I messed that up. So I would, back off their numbers and I would give them like really specific goals for the workout. Like, here's what we're trying to do. Let's not just try to go all out all the time because that's going to set you up for failure, defeat the purpose. And I think make them feel better if they know the plan.
So when you say specific goals, would that be like, try to take each lap of this mile repeat faster? Or is it like try to focus on saying this mantra at this point in the interval? Like, give me some more tangible examples of some of those more specific goals you might assign.
It might be like, okay, say we're doing 5x1K, for example, which is a workout I like to do. The first one is going to be like a transition from like, your warm up after your drills and strides, whatever. It's going to be a transition. So let's do it at goal marathon pace so that there is like a really solid reason for that. And we're training something specific. Okay. That's goal marathon pace. Okay. This next one, we're going to practice some pace change so that we can the goal for this one is that you start slower because you usually start fast. And then you're going to kick it in the last one. And then the third one, fast. Let's do this fast. I know you can hit this time. Boom. That's like, your typical VO2 workout. And then we're going to come back. We're going to do some things, so whatever the point of the workout is.
Really cool. Really cool. I have another question for you, but I also want to make sure that folks queue up their questions either in the chat by chatting them to everyone and I can read them out, or you can send me a DM if you want me to read it out, or if you want to use the hand raise feature on Zoom, I can flag you and call on you to ask Nell a question directly. One of the last questions I want to make sure to ask Nell is if you saw an amateur runner who was like, I want to take my running to the next level, what would be the first things you would assign to get them to be doing things, frankly, more like the way you do them? What would be the top of your list that you would say, well, this is step number 1, step number 2?
I'd make sure that they're doing strength work, strength and mobility, so that they can step up their level. They can either higher the intensity or the volume consistently. And then if it depends. If someone came to me, typically, I coach a lot of marathon runners. Typically, in my philosophy, in my opinion, this is not all the time, not at all, but someone wants to take it to the next level, like, well, I add more speed work, because a lot of the times people have this mentality, marathoners have this mentality that they have to do a lot of long threshold runs. And in my experience and research, long tempo runs at marathon pace only benefit you for so long. Like you get a benefit out of the first couple, and then after that, you're like, okay, you're not increasing intensity. You're not increasing any stress to your body. So like, you're really not getting a lot of benefit. So for me, I would add even 200s, 400s, 600s in to their training program.
Are there any workouts that, like, if someone was training with you, that you're a big fan of for marathon stuff in particular? Are you a Yaso's person? You mentioned 1Ks. Like, is there anything that tends to be a staple of Nell's training plans? Either not necessarily as an indicator workout, but it's something that, like, yep, if Nell's my coach, like, I know somewhere there's going to be a couple of core blocks of these.
I'd say, like, if Nell's my coach, like, you're going to be doing speed work. You're going to be 200s. You're going to be doing, if you're doing a marathon, you will run a 1 mile time trial. You will run a 2 mile time trial. So, time trials might be that, or 200s, 400s might be that, which is, a little atypical of marathon.
Yeah. So maybe you can tell folks, like, where in the training cycle it might be appropriate to factor in 200s, 400s, mile time trials. Is that like that's not something you have somebody doing, 2 weeks before race day necessarily. So like, where does that fit in for somebody thinking about, like, oh, I never thought about what would typically be an anaerobic workout like that being part of marathon training?
Honestly, like, I will make sure there's some sort of like either 200s, 400s, 600s every other week in there, just to touch on it. To get that speed. And it depends who the person is, like, I do that because I need to get faster. Like, my half marathon times needs to get faster because I compete against runners who are closing in a 109, and so, like, if I can't run a 109 smoothly, and if I can't run a 31-minute 10K, I can't run a 109. And if I can't run a 5K, you know what I mean? So it trickles all the way down to, like, what's my mile time? So, I throw speed work in there every other week.
What is your mile time right now?
I've run 444. Currently it's not 444. Currently I probably run 450. Sorry.
I was gonna say 550. I feel like you could run for a few miles now.
I hope so.
Throw that out there.
So yeah.
Right on. Let me make sure to open it up as well. Go ahead, use the hand raise feature. I can call on folks. You can use the chat. There's probably a lot of questions you can get. As you can tell, for those who are here in the Zoom itself and not watching either after the fact in the recording or live streaming the recording on the co-stream, Nell's an open book and really honest. So make sure you get your shots in now. Can't promise you that when you see her in person in Boulder at our workout, she's going to be all business. She's not going to take any of your shit. So get them in now. If there's questions there, we can do that. Let's see. And maybe now, while we're waiting to see if there are any questions that populate in one form or another, tell us a little bit about, like, as fans of yours, what we could expect to see. What are you racing coming up this year? What's on the schedule that you're willing to reveal that we can get excited to cheer at you for?
I'm racing the Boulder on Monday. Been in Mexico for about 2 weeks now, so you don't have to really review those results if you're not interested. But I'm racing Peachtree. I'll be racing the mini 10K, the New York mini 10K, and then Falmouth, 20K Champs, New Haven. And then, I don't think I'm allowed to say my fall marathon yet. but I'm really excited for that one.
But it rhymes with Pleclaglo, in case, no, I'm just kidding. I see a couple questions came in. Eduardo, let me go over to you. Let me ask you to unmute and share your question, and then we'll go over to Scott's question that was in the chat after that.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Jake. Hi, Nell.
Hi.
Really
Thanks for being here.
Nice to meet you as well. I'm from Mexico, right?
Nice. I was just in Mexico. I practiced a lot of Spanish. It was great.
Excellent. I'm right now relocated back to Mexico City out of Miami, but I'm Mexican, right? So my first questions, two questions. You referred to strength training, right? What's the best time to program the strength training? Is it on the easy days or on the hard days, given that the speed? Well, I'm doing a speed workout on Tuesday and Thursdays, right? Monday, Wednesday, and Friday are really easy on recovery, and the long run is on Saturday. So is doing the strength on Tuesday and Thursday is okay? Or I don't know, what's your best advice on that? And what's your best advice for training or doing those time trials at a high altitude like Mexico?
Yeah, good question. Yeah. So regarding strength training, Ashley knows this. My kind of philosophy on strength training has shifted and molded and, a lot. So it depends. For me now, strength training is everything from going to the gym and like doing some like hip mobility, and like basically like strengthening like my like internal rotation, and so that kind of stuff doesn't really make me sore. Like it's not like it's not taking a lot of energy from you, it's not making you sore. So that stuff, like I'm in the gym 4 days a week, so obviously all those days aren't hard, so I go on some easy days, on some hard days. If your strength training is like gonna make you sore, or it's hard, heavy lifting, which I do, I still do, those days for me are on harder days. I would definitely do them after hard workouts and then recover the next day, especially for you, because you only have one day between your two quality days. I would recommend, like for me, my athletes always have 2 days in between quality days. So for example, if I always do Tuesday, Friday, quality workouts, and then the Sunday, easy long run. If it's a weekend hard long run, I might do like Tuesday, Saturday hard long run. And people have different approaches to that, which is totally fine. Like I know Hanson's approach is like do a lot of high intensity on really tired legs. That's like totally not my style. But so yeah, I would do it on your hard days. That's my answer to that question. And then yeah. And then, I would say approach to time trials at altitude, short, make them short. I would do 400. I do 400 time trials. And then I would do like 1 mile, 2 mile, like shorter distances. So that you can get that high intensity, because that's what you're going for. And then just, like make sure you go into the time trial with a plan. You're not just going in and because it's like time trials, I was telling Ashley this the other day, like time trials are so hard alone in training, because like you're not tapered, there's no one there, you don't have, you're just nervous and it's ruining your week and you're like, oh God, and then you go out too fast. So like just like have a plan, like, okay, for this mile, I always start conservative for my races, my time trials. I'm going to run the first lap conservatively 5 seconds slower than like I want my pace to be. And then I'm always going to try to finish hard. I'm going to make sure that I finish hard on all of my time trials. Yeah. And that makes it like more doable, more manageable.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, because sometimes on those time trials, I feel the anxiety. I'm more like an endurance runner, right? For the long
Mhm.
run and keeping that heart rate. But racing in time trials is kind of different because sometimes, yeah, I will burn out on the,
Yep.
and that feels like it's always like on the struggle, right? And
Yep.
not able to close it out. But yeah,
Yep. Start
yeah,
easy.
great.
Start easy is my biggest advice, and really start easy. Actually start easy.
Excellent. Thank you.
And
Yeah.
I can echo some of what Nell shared to some of those pieces. One of the nice benefits to Endeavor Run is that we have a lot of pro athletes who train with different groups, and around strength training in particular, there are a lot of different philosophies. There are the groups like Hanson's that really want to do a hard, like a heavy lift the day before an intervals workout. So they're doing it on tired legs. I know, interestingly enough, I know a lot of my middle distance pro athletes that I've been in touch with, they will do a hard, like really hard session, and they will like grab a bar to eat and then go hit the gym and lift really heavy that day. So their easy days are extra easy. I
Mhm.
generally encourage athletes to make the easy days really easy and your
Mhm.
hard days really hard for the kind of stimulus you want.
Mhm.
But like there are competing things. So if you do feel like what you're doing isn't getting you results, there is enough evidence to try something new, which is
Mhm.
important.
Absolutely.
But I tend to agree. I tend to agree with Nell. Like I would probably prescribe strength. Now, there's also some evidence that getting in a heavy lift somewhere like 6 to 8 hours after a hard workout is actually slightly more optimal from a physiological adaptation standpoint than getting in that heavy lift right after. But scheduling wise, for most folks that aren't a pro, that's not really doable. Don't worry. If you're going to the gym right after your workout, that's still going to get a lot of benefit. Like, don't be like, oh, I've got to like quit my job and get a new job that allows me on
Mhm.
Tuesdays to like get a lift in 6 hours. Like, that's not worth it. That like, then you're
Mhm.
But Jake, what
killing
what I
yourself.
think is doable is for the working athlete. I mean, on a one day of the week, just say this is going to be a hard day, and I'm going to wake up early, and I'm going to get my hard workout, very quality session done, and then you go to work, and you have to eat. That's the thing about it. You mentioned eating a bar, but you have to refuel after your workout and eat a lunch or something like that, and then before you go home, get your lift done. And I find that if I do that and do some standing during the day, it's okay. And then on Thursday, if I do that on a Wednesday or whatever, then on Thursday I'm like, okay, super easy. But what I found is when I would run hard on Wednesday and then say, okay, I'm just going to lift tomorrow, I never really felt for that next big workout. I don't think I gave myself that 2 days at least that Nell's talking about to be able to really recover and have those easy days. So for me, I will tell you that having a few hours in between, do the heavy lift, and then actually take recovery days is critical for me. I've tried the right after grab a shake or grab a bar. And I almost feel like if it was a heavy lift, like if she had me doing deadlifts or a squat or something like that, I didn't have enough juice, right? I didn't have enough gas.
Mhm.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. No, Scott had a question, and then Dan had a question. Scott's question was like benefits of training as a team as opposed to solo running, pros and cons. What do you think, Nell?
Yeah, I mean, I have had to adjust. It's like there's a learning curve training with a team for me because I've trained alone for so long. And when I say alone, I mean with my dad coaching me, which is not alone. Like when you're at the track and someone's coaching you through a workout and they're timing you and they're talking to you between sets, like that's not alone. That's basic. That's like my favorite way to do a workout, not all the time, because like you can listen to your body, you're doing exactly what your body needs to do. You can plan it. But so like that's the best about training alone is like you're like, I'm hitting the splits I need to hit that are written for me. With a group, you can be pushed to things that you could never do alone, like you can run faster, you can run longer. A lot of people are like way more motivated if they're with a group. So yeah, you can draft off them, you can switch off leads. There are many benefits to being with a group, which, like the other day I was doing 1Ks and I was like, having trouble. I wasn't having trouble, but I was like, I was hitting like these paces, and then the last one, my training partner led, and I was like 10 seconds faster without even trying harder, so I think that says a lot.
We are generally pack animals for the most part as humans, and there's some validity in that. I do think there's a good sense in mixing it up, right? Especially like if you're going to be racing solo, like there's some value to doing some of those runs where you're in your own head. I think, Scott, the most interesting answer to that question actually would probably come from our co-coach Matt Fitzgerald, just in the way he talks about, he pushed himself a ton working solo. And then when he spent the summer embedded living alongside NAZ Elite, like he wasn't running with them obviously in workouts, but the experience of like starting at the same time, finishing together, like having those pieces together, even if you're not running with the other person the whole time, that's kind of an in-between, right? Like you're not necessarily getting pulled through an interval by somebody, but you're also not there just by yourself. So like there's different gradations of it. And I think mixing it up is pretty cool. And
yeah,
totally
mixing up is awesome. And also like everyone's very different, and that's okay.
For sure.
Thank you.
Diane had a cool question about aging athletes. Diane in particular started running later, right? Started around age 50 and is going up and still has a lot to learn. Nell, do you work with any sort of older athletes? Do you advise sort of older athletes any differently than you would younger ones?
Yeah. I mean, I have some older athletes for sure. My dad though has older athletes. My dad is 70, and he's been coaching forever, but I'm at the track with them every Wednesday morning. My dad has like a big group of masters athletes. So they're like, they're like in their 60s, 50s, 60s. And really, I think, so I see what he does with them. And it's basically just like a lot of listening to your body and backing off, and like, I think less is more. And I think if you're better off undercooked and, slightly undercooked and healthy, because you want to be running. The most important thing is that you are running, you have longevity in the sport. So I think basically like we make sure, because with some of my younger athletes, I'm like, yeah, let's take a couple like little risks here, like I'm pushing you hard. But with a lot of the older ones, I'm like, the most important thing is that you stay healthy this workout. Remember that, so yeah.
The best ability is availability when it comes to being an older athlete. So I think that's well said. What other questions do folks have for Nell? Now, I have a question for you while we're waiting. Is this like a professional Zoom video background that you've set up? I feel like your lighting is there. You've got like this night, like it's not blurred. Like, are you recording a lot of YouTube video, whiteboard videos there? Like, what is this setup that you've brought to us?
Wow. I am glad that you think that.
It's the sort of, it's got a very sort of like postmodernist kind of like simplicity as elegance look, like there's a real grandiosity in the blandness is what I'm thinking. I'm impressed.
Yeah. That's awesome. No, I'm just sitting at my kitchen table and I have yet to put a painting up there.
Right on.
Yeah.
We're going to get a painting of you winning Boston outright. I think will be the next, when that happens. You can sign it yourself. That. We can do it. I would love that. Any final questions
Jake,
for Nell?
I want to tell everybody about the experience of being coached by Nell in a group track workout, just because I think that might be something interesting to people who are thinking about Boulder. I have had the opportunity to be coached by Nell. I knew I was coming to run with her group, but I didn't know how it was going to work. I didn't know if I was going to be doing the same workout that everybody else was. And I think there were like 10 people that day, varying ages. I think I saw people late 20s all the way up to maybe late 50s. Everybody's training for something different. She had one woman that was getting ready for Kona. She had me, I was getting ready for October Boston, shorter races, track, road, whatever. She had each of us doing different things at different paces and had her little stopwatch, nothing fancy, just had her stopwatch. And I've told people about this because I said, this is what a real coach can do. But she had one woman running, I don't know, 5x1 or whatever. She had me running, 8x400, totally different pace. She was calling out my splits, just, looking at this, coaching us all as we went through. And I'm thinking, I could do this with one athlete, right? But she had different abilities, different athletes, different workouts, telling us where we were, being able to keep up with all of it. And I said, that's somebody that's been doing this all of her life and been around it with Rick, right? Seeing how that worked. But I felt like, and I think everybody there at the workout felt like she was just looking at me, at my individual performance. And of course, that wasn't the case. She's managing us all at the same time. But I think that's the mark of a really good coach, is that you feel like you are her priority at that time. Trust me when I tell you, I was one of the slowest ones out there, and I'm not, her star coming from Dallas the day beforehand to run a speed workout at Boulder. I'm
We were definitely the star.
let's be clear about that. And so I feel like someone who can give you that individual touch while you're in a group environment. And so I'm really looking forward to the Boulder group this year, having that experience of a world-class athlete training you and giving you individual feedback while you're in that group setting, which is really, I love the group setting. I think that just having, like you said, Jake, that pack mentality. I think Alex Hutchinson also said that we share, because when you're in a pack, we basically share the effort. So our rate of perceived effort really gets lower because we're sharing it amongst the pack. And so being able to do, a hard workout, I mean, let's be clear, track it at Boulder is a tough endeavor as it is. And so it's, you're working out there, and to be able to have that coached experience is really going to be special. So you're in for a treat for that.
That's cool, Ashley. Yeah, you're right. And I know Hutch has written about that. Yeah, there's a sort of school of fish effect that does take place when you're in that experience with others. You are actually in a sort of, without getting too woo here, there's a certain sort of almost group consciousness element to it where the load does get shared. That's been sort of measured, at least in perceived exertion on self-report mechanisms, which is pretty cool. So Ashley, thanks for that plug. I mean, I'm super excited that Nell will be there to host that workout alongside our other experts and pros. And I'm hoping to be physically capable enough to not be injured and let Nell kick my ass out there a little bit too. We had a great question from Pat here, maybe good final question for us as the time is we're approaching the hour mark. Pat said he got a recommendation to run longer hills to get his heart rate up, 400 meters, 800 meters. That can be a long way for a hill interval. How do you think about hills when you're coaching your athletes? Do you recommend shorter stuff up to 100 meters, stuff longer as well? How do you think about hills now?
Depends what you're training for. But I do a lot of I will do hills at the beginning of a cycle. Unless you're running like Boston or even running Boston, there's not a lot of hill repeats. It's a lot of hills in your workouts or intervals or tempo runs. But I will do so the hills come for me during your speed cycle. So I like to do a solid, if possible, 12-week speed cycle before a marathon cycle. And during that, I'll start, with some hills, and usually the hills, usually for my athletes, they're usually 400-meter hills. I'm not going to lie. And then sometimes we'll go to, it depends, cause I coach OCR athletes who are running up mountains. But 800 typically don't do, just because you can't really get that power, which is why I use hills, is for strength and power, not exactly to get your heart rate up. And so I'll do maybe a 4 to 6 week build with hills every other week.
Yeah, that makes sense though. I mean, you will definitely get your heart rate up running a half mile uphill, but you're probably sort of splitting the difference between optimizing for power and optimizing for heart rate over a longer period of time when you're doing that. So And generally, obviously, like you most likely can't run hills or aren't running hills if they're 100 meters at the same pace you're running the same hill if it's 400 meters, because then you're either running the 100 way too slow or you're running the 400 way too hard, which is probably impossible if you were doing the 100. So you may want to think about those gradations as well. When you do shorter hills with athletes now, 200 or less, is it a noticeably different hill you have them on? Or is it just less rest, et cetera, or more repeats, or same thing, but different stimulus?
It honestly, most of it depends on what they have available. But I will say, like, yeah, some of the shorter stuff, like I tend to start with like not as steep stuff. And then say like they're a 5K runner, I'll have them do like a steeper, shorter hill. I'll work into a steeper, shorter hill, and then I'll work back down to more a fast, less steep hill. So it's kind of like but usually with my marathon runners, like, you know, we keep it to like a runnable hill where you can actually run pretty fast on. Yeah.
That's cool. Right on. Now we could probably ask you questions all night. And you'd be kind enough and obliged to answer, but I'm going to let you go and everyone else go. I want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this and shove it into a busy schedule of yours. This is really cool. Always great to hear what you have to say. And thanks just for being you, and your candor is just the bomb. I am so thrilled that you're going to be a part of the retreat this August in Boulder, and hopefully enjoying Taco Fest with us and other things after that workout in Boulder that weekend, which will be fun. And I'm looking forward to having you as sort of more and more a part of the Endeavor Run community. I think as a coach, as a pro, just brings so much to the table. And we're big fans of yours here, and just want to say thank you. Where can folks find and follow you if they're not already doing it? What's your preferred social venue? Is it the gram, or are there new things that you kids are up to that I don't even know about?
No, I'm not a kid, man. Instagram, Nell Rojas running. Yeah, if you have any questions, shoot me some questions on there, or yeah, that's basically where I am.
And are you looking for new coachees as well? Is that something you're open to right now? If folks who are watching this are interested in being coached by you?
I am not taking on new clients right now, but you know, I can always put people on wait lists, and like, you know, running is very dynamic. So sometimes like I might soon.
Right on. That's good to have. Everyone, thanks so much for joining. It's great to have you. And
thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
It looks like Ruby wanted to say one thing though, if she could. So I'll unmute for her there. Go ahead, Ruby.
For Nell and for anyone that's wondering, I will upload. I help Jake with the social media, so I will upload the recording to this as a link in our bio after this. So if you want to promote it, or if anyone wants to share it with people who you think might benefit from it, it'll be in the bio.
Right on. Thanks, Ruby.
Good to see you, Ruby.
Right on. Nell, thanks so much. Thank you guys for joining. Have a great, safe week, and we'll hopefully talk to you again real soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.